There was a story, it was a week or two ago, that came out, and I'm working on memory here, so you'll have to bear with me on the statistics, but I believe that it stated that last year saw the highest number of suicides on the Golden Gate Bridge. Mm-hmm. I think that's why we were talking about this.
It sounds about right. I'm not sure, but I remember that being the story.
It got us along the conversation of this documentary called The Bridge. I had never seen it, had heard about it, and wanted to. It came out in 2006. And while we were talking about that, we had a call from somebody who said, hey, there's a guy that actually survived an attempt on the bridge, and he goes around and he talks and he does motivational speaking and talks to people about mental disorders and so forth, and suicide. And so that kind of intrigued us, and we're like, well, yeah, I'd love to talk to somebody like that and see what they have to say. And then after that, over that weekend, I went and I watched the documentary.
It's amazing.
It's incredible.
Amazing.
It's compelling. It takes you on a roller coaster ride of emotions.
Yeah.
So we got him on the line to talk about this. And he goes around to, he does corporate events and members of the military and so forth and speaks regularly. So he can definitely
doing a lot of good.
Talk at length at this. So let's welcome him. His name is Kevin Hines, and we want to welcome him to our show this morning. Hi, Kevin. Good morning.
How are you guys?
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Fantastic. Had you heard, or do you still hear about the bridge in particular? Was I correct, or do you know that the numbers of suicides have just
46 last year?
It was 46, yeah, and I think that's the most in a calendar year, isn't it?
That's the most in a calendar year of any year. The average for the last, I'd say, 10 years has been 34 to 37 deaths. And in August alone of last year, instead of having one person die there every 10 days, they were having one person die there every 3 to 4 days.
Wow.
It was awful.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do something about it at the Bridge Rail Foundation, co-founded by my father.
Okay.
Kevin, where does the Golden Gate Bridge rank in suicides? Because I know that I was in the movie and in just other things I've read about it, in a bizarre way, it's sort of a romantic destination point for people looking to commit suicide. So where does it rank? Do you have any idea?
Well, it's considered the number one suicide spot location in the world.
Okay.
If you will. The most suicides of any location occur at the Golden Gate Bridge. And my debate is that, if you had any 2-mile stretch of land where one person was dying every 10 days, not because they wanted to, but because they were mentally unstable.
Right.
And if you could see that death, if that death hit the ground, and pardon me for saying this, but the body was splattered everywhere, that would be taken care of in a matter of weeks or months.
Right.
And this has taken 77 years to get something done here. And the question that everyone has, won't they just go somewhere else? Well, there's a Richard Seiden study, and Richard Seiden is a suicidologist, and one who studies the prevention of suicide, and he has made it crystal clear that if you keep having these easy accesses of lethal means, then people will die by suicide. But statistically, over the course of history, when we take away the access of lethal means, people actually don't die by suicide, and they actually get help.
Oh, well, you're eliminating one more option for someone, and it does make sense. I know that the buildings in New York, have had different ways of dealing with this. There is a plan or a program underway, or at least a proposed way to handle it that involves extensive netting. Is that correct?
That's right. There's a net 20 feet below. There's the idea of the net 20 feet below the bridge coming out on each side, and it would be impossible to release yourself from this net to the water. It would collapse on top of you, take you to a bit of a trolley car, and that trolley car would take you to safety, and those people would make sure they got you the mental health help that you needed.
Yeah.
And so this is what we're looking at. And there's a lot of people out there, I don't know if you guys know this, that talk about, well, why would you want to ruin the aesthetics of a bridge? And to that I say, I'm sorry, but what are the aesthetics to a bridge compared to just one human life? Your mother, your sister, your friend, your brother.
Kevin, what are we talking about cost-wise? Not to put it in those terms, but I mean, are we talking?
Oh, sure, I understand.
We're major financial.
We're talking about a proposed $66 million project headed up by the MTC, the Bridge Rail Foundation, and the Bridge District itself, who owns and runs the bridge. So we're asking for some federal funds and some funds coming from Highway and Transportation. These funds, look, they can't go towards mental health. They can't go towards helping a clinic. They can go towards highway and transportation issues.
Okay.
And this is a public nuisance, a public example of it's a heinous crime, in my opinion, to let that bridge be a harbinger of death for 77 years.
Yeah. Kevin, where are you from, by the way? Are you from that area?
Born and raised San Francisco.
Okay.
I live here now.
All right. So I just was wondering if, people actually travel there from out of state, out of time zone. And
They do. Not as often as you'd think, but
Right.
the majority of the people who die at the bridge are from the resounding Bay areas. But there are those people that travel all across the country. There are people who travel across the world to die there.
Yeah.
And Kev, can you explain to us your frame of mind leading up to you going to the bridge and then jumping off? Because obviously you weren't of sound body and mind at that point.
That's right. I'm glad you pointed that out. I have bipolar disorder, type 1 with psychotic features. That means I have terrible manic highs and terrible depressive lows mixed in with paranoid delusions and hallucinations and all kinds of other terrible stuff. At the point of my attempt, I was hearing voices telling me that I had to die. There was not 1 ounce of my body that wanted to die by suicide. I only believed I had to. And so because of my mental illness, because of my brain's misaligned chemicals in my brain and imbalances, I went to the bridge, and I'm hearing these voices louder than you can possibly imagine, screaming in my head that I had to die and I had to jump now, and that's what I did.
So you were 19 at the time you attempted this?
I was 19, yeah.
All right, and how far out on the bridge, because the actual movie indicates there are areas that are kind of the go-to areas, where exactly were you?
Well, the one thing in suicide prevention that you don't want to do is name those areas.
Okay.
For the people who would hear this, who would be having a hard time right now. The one thing you want them to do is call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. But
yeah, it's obviously very valid information. The reason I ask is because it seems to me, knowing how high, just even the lowest point of the bridge, when you hit the water, it's like hitting concrete.
That's right.
And
you stop for less than a second.
Right.
A vacuum sucks you under about 70 to 80 feet. It's awful.
So you're down, and what we've heard, and as relayed by yourself, you decide on the way down, I don't want to do this.
Well, it was really an instant regret. It was instantaneous. The millisecond my hands and feet left that rail, all I could think of was, what have I just done? And I want to die. God, please save me. And then I hit the water.
Did the voices stop?
And then what I did, frankly, was I prayed.
Yeah.
Prayed to live. And that was... It was a horrible experience, and in the water, as I bobbed up and down, trying to stay afloat, trying to stay above water and not drown, which was very, very difficult, given the fact that I lost the use of my legs when I hit the water. I broke my back, shattered 3 vertebrae,
Wow.
and so I'm floundering in the water, trying to stay afloat, hoping that someone will come and save me, and then something brushes by my legs, some slimy thing brushes by my legs, and I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
I didn't die off that silly bridge, and now a shark is going to eat me, and I didn't have any knowledge whether sharks fed in those areas or not. That's just the first thing that came to my mind.
And
years later, I was on a show on ABC where a gentleman called in, and he said, "Kevin, I'm so very glad you're alive." He said, "I have lived with the fact that I couldn't find out whether you lived or died after I was standing less than 2 feet away from you when you jumped." And he said, "You mentioned that you thought there was a shark beneath you," which I did on that show, and he said it was no shark. It was a sea lion, and the people above on the bridge looking down believed to be keeping you afloat until that Coast Guard boat arrived behind you. That's miracle number 1. The only reason that Coast Guard boat arrived behind me was in less than the time I would set into hypothermia and drown was because a woman who was driving by saw me at the point of my jump, had a car phone, not a cell phone, it was 2000, had a car phone, called her friend, one of her greatest friends, who happened to be in the Coast Guard. And that's the only reason they arrived to me, which in less than the time that I would die of hypothermia.
Kevin, obviously it's a really heavy topic and a serious one, but can you speak a little bit to an outsider's perspective on if somebody looks at someone else with bipolar or depression, they sometimes make judgments and they don't realize that what they're going through is a medical anomaly, a medical condition. Can you speak a little bit about if you are going through depression, if you have bipolar, what you can do to seek help?
Sure. There are so many things. One of the greatest things you can do is reach out to NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I'll be speaking there at NAMI Southwestern PA soon. And they are an organization that is dedicated to giving help to those with mental illness and their families. So they hold these classes these 12-week classes that can teach families and their loved ones with mental illness how to cope with it, how to fight it, how to beat it, and how to live with it. And they're a fantastic organization that is really based all around the country. And they do this work, and it's free. You give your time, and they'll give you the help and education you need.
Kevin, do you ever feel lows like that anymore?
Oh, absolutely. I make it very clear that I struggle every day. I have the symptoms I have always had. The difference between the yesterday Kevin and the today Kevin, the yesterday Kevin who went off a bridge and the today Kevin who travels around the country and the globe speaking about these issues, trying to raise awareness, is that I am self-aware. If a mentally ill person can find the ability to live as self-aware as humanly possible, by that I mean when you have a manic episode, you talk about it first. You go to the doctor. You talk about how you can get back to regularity. When you have a depressive episode, instead of taking yourself into the depths of depression where you end up potentially harming yourself, you take yourself to a doctor, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, a counselor in school, a friend, a confidant, and you make sure you get yourself to safety. It's all possible. The last 3 psychiatric wards I walked into myself. And that's a big step from where I was, and I've been in 7 psych wards in less than 9 years up to 2011, but for the last 3, I turned myself in to make sure that I would live through the day.
So, Kevin, you had some psychotic episodes. You were hearing voices.
All the time.
What's the difference, though, to someone who is depressed, has depression, and is putting this on themselves, as opposed to hearing what they perceive as an outside voice telling them to do this? I mean, is there a big difference between?
Well, there's certainly a difference, but you have to think about where that depression comes from.
Okay.
That depression comes from a very deep-seated negative self-voice. Mm-hmm. The Glendon Association out of Santa Barbara talks a lot about that, the negative self-voice, and that's about the things we've heard growing up and the situations we've been through and the traumas we've experienced, those with mental illness, and how that negative self-voice overtakes you and in a sense drives that depression deeper and deeper and deeper. And so when that's happening, the best thing one can do is find positivity within their lives, or people that are positive who can reach them, who can reach deep into that pit of darkness and show them to the tunnel of light.
There was an HBO documentary a number of years ago, and it was letters that had people who had lost family members to suicide, and what I took away from that special is it's just a lot of anger. Why, and the curse of what's left behind by people who do this. But in your experiences, and from what you understand, the majority of people, this isn't like the people jumping off the bridge are not, star-crossed lovers or so on and so forth. It's almost always...
And I must say, that's a bit of a misunderstanding and misrepresentation. It's not really as much of a romantic place to die, although there have been some accounts of people mentioning that, but those accounts are very few and far between.
Right.
It really is a place where you are so distraught, so down, and so dilapidated that you go to a place to take your life because you believe you are useless, worthless, hopeless, and you have no future. That's why people take their lives.
Right.
That's the majority of the reason. There are, of course, the people who believe they can fly in psychotic episodes, and that's a whole different scenario.
Right.
But I'm talking about the majority of people who live with mental illness every day, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed, and they're going to harm themselves because they believe they're not from this world and that they're useless. And that's just something we're trying to combat. And that's why, I'll be speaking at the 14th Annual Education Conference for NAMI on Saturday, April 14th in southwestern PA.
If you're just tuning in, it's Kevin Hines, and he survived a suicide attempt jumping from the Golden Gate Bridge. I've read that you're one of only 33 people who actually lived. Have you met other people that have jumped off of that bridge, particularly?
One person, and he was a fantastic man. He had a much different story than my own. He was lucky to, it's my understanding, have his depression be only situational, and when he attempted and survived, he never went back to that train of thought. It was a very unique experience for this particular man, and he's the only one I've met in that situation.
Do you know if any of the other survivors attempted suicide once again, or have you ever heard?
It's my understanding that there was one individual, and I have to look back at my notes, but it's my understanding there's one individual who attempted, and then years later attempted again and died.
Okay, and Kevin, you know, when I see, and most people, when they see this bridge in San Francisco and the Bay and all that, I see it as a beautiful piece of architecture. It's so picturesque.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you see it that way at all?
You know, of course I can. Before it was the place that I attempted to take my life, it was the beautiful Golden Gate Bridge. Mm-hmm. And after it was the place that I attempted to take my life, it is the same. Right. But I will tell you, it may be a beautiful, gorgeous piece of red and iron architecture, but it is also, like I said earlier, a terrible death trap, a harbinger of death. And I maintain that this is just like, you know, a doctor, a psychiatrist walking into a psychiatric ward and laying out a loaded gun on the table, and it's like a free-for-all. It's a 4-foot rail. It's too easy. If we take away the lethal access the means of lethal access, the deaths are going to stop. And you know what? I don't know if you know this, but in some places all around the world where they put up nets and railings like this on bridges and other buildings, the suicide rates don't just drop at that particular spot. They tend to drop in the metropolitan areas around that spot because you're fixing a major problem that is really an icon for death. And so there's a way to do this where everyone involved is happy. I mean, we decided to go from the railing to the net so people wouldn't mind, you know, the aesthetic differences.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing that everyone fought against. But when rightfully so, when a child of, I believe, 3 months of age hit a curb inside a stroller and fell through the cracks of the Golden Gate Bridge, there was a railing up in less than 3 months.
Right. Yeah.
With no ask for public comment, with no need for extra funding, it just happened. And when I asked the bridge director there why she would do that for this baby, and why not for the people who were dying by suicide, her response was, well, that baby was innocent. And I replied, you mean I'm guilty? And she said, yes.
Wow.
Well, that's a sobering thing to hear. And that actually speaks to my question, which is, and I'm not likening migraine headaches to the depression and bipolar situation that you're in, but my wife for many years would always suffered pretty extreme migraines. And people be, oh, okay, like almost not believing.
Yeah.
And
what
when
you
it comes
you can't define.
Right. So, and that's something that for you and for other people going through this, it's because there are no outward signs of it.
Yeah.
So
let's put the nail on the head. Your brain, what is it? It's the single most powerful organ in your entire body, right? It affects everything you do, everything you don't do. It's on automatic mode 88% of the time. And so if the brain is malfunctioning in any way, shape, or form, or imbalanced, so goes the rest of you and your life. And people need to wake up and understand that, you know, the brain has the power to shut off organs. And if the brain is the organ in trouble, boy, we're in for a ride here. Right. And we need people to comprehend that this is real. I go to so many places where I talk to families and parents, and they just look at me and they say, I don't believe mental illness is real. We're far past that point.
Yeah.
We're far past that point.
Mental illness is just as real as physical illness, and it takes time for some people to recognize that. Kevin, what have you been encouraged by as you traveled around the country?
You know, one of the biggest things I've been encouraged by, frankly, is my family. I'm adopted, but my biological family, I found them, and they've been a great help and service to me, and they back me up 100%. My mom and dad, who adopted me, and my brother and sister, who were all adopted from different families into one, they had my back this entire time, which is rare, I guess. Not everybody has a great family to fall back on when you're going through such pain. I happen to. And my faith, my family, and my friends have really gotten me through all of this and kept me going. And one of the things that I learned early on in searching for my biological family was that my grandmother's name, her given name, was Hope. Mm-hmm. And that was a great experience for me, because I'm a very sensitive man who listens to the signs of the world. And And that hope within hope helped me keep going forward and never stop working to stay mentally well, even though it's extremely hard and it doesn't always pan out the way I want it to.
It's pretty wild, though, Kev, just to think that, 14 short years ago, you were feeling hopeless and worthless, and here you are today. You're a beacon of light for a lot of people who are feeling the same way as you were 14 years ago, and your life does have worth, and you are helping save lives, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And Kevin, by the way, you said you're going to be in Southwest PA at some point?
Yeah, let me correct that. It's NAMI Southwestern PA's annual conference in Pittsburgh on April 12th.
Okay. All right, and we'll urge anybody to follow along with you. You're on Twitter. It's at Kevin Hines Story. If people want to follow along, and maybe if they have questions, they can tweet them to you or so forth. But
sure.
It's a compelling story. It's a story that has hope to it, and a story of regret and turning things around and all of that. But if people haven't seen the film, The Bridge, which is It's amazing. Pretty much speechless when you see it.
And Kevin's own book.
Yeah, absolutely. But thank you so much for getting in touch with us. We do appreciate it, Kevin.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate that, too.
All right, you got it. Kevin Hines, guys.
Yeah.
All right, take care, man. Wow, that is some heavy stuff.
Yeah,
and not to jump in here, but the thing that just really resonates with me, Preston, is that notion of the second he let go, he said, "Oh, no."
Yeah. Right.
You know,
like immediately. Oh, this was the wrong choice.
And he describes, that he tried to position his body, and that's might have been what saved him into a more of a bullet going down feet first.
Yeah, he went down feet first.
Still broken back, broken ribs.
Yeah, only 5% of people survived the initial impact.
Yeah.
A lot of them drown after that, even though the 5% that live, and then so I don't know what percentage, the 33 people out of the thousands, I guess, hundreds or thousands of people that have jumped off that bridge over the years, but it's unbelievable.
And by the way, those waters are shark infested.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wild, man. And the way he described, you can't define what you can't perceive. There's Casey and I, we've been watching that True Detective, and there's an episode called Locked Room, and I watched the making of portion of it afterwards, and they said basically your mind, and it makes sense, is a locked room. You're the only one who can perceive things the way you perceive them. You can describe them, and you can try to explain to people what it is, but you're the only one who knows exactly what's going on there. So you've got to get help, but you can also help yourself. And step one in helping yourself is asking for help from someone else,